Hi to those who's just joined us. We're going to start in just a couple of minutes. We're going to let a few more people join and then we'll get started. So thanks for joining us today. Okay, I think we'll kick off, and I'm sure we'll have other people joining us, so they can just jump in as they arrive. So first of all, thank you very much for joining us today. Welcome to this event. My name is Alex Fury. I'm the founder of Zero Waste Mindset, and this is a London Climate Action Week event as part of the Schools Climate Summit. And so we're looking at the role schools play or can play in the transitioning to a use or sharing economy. We've got a fantastic panel of speakers, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves very shortly. But just to quickly explain how the session is going to work today, we'll start after the panelists have introduced themselves by jumping into a panel discussion, and we'll just ask a few questions I've got. But then we'd love to open up to the audience, asking questions you might have. So please do feel free to paste comments, any questions you have into the chat as we go along, and then we'll come to those either at the time if it fits with the discussion, or we'll bring them into the last part of the discussion. Just going to pause a second, my internet goes unstable and then it comes back in. But I'm just letting you know we're recording this session, and it will be also available, the recording will be on the London Climate Action Week YouTube channel. Probably will take a couple of days to come up, but you'll be able to find it there. But I'd just like to understand a bit more about people who've joined us. So those who've joined us so far, can you just paste in the chat where you're joining us from? So for example, if you're in the UK, let's start with people in the UK. Whereabouts in the UK are you joining us from? Could you just tell us? Scotland, great. Anybody else? If you're not from the UK and you're joining us from outside, oh, Singapore, amazing. Anybody else from outside of the UK joining us here today? Okay, no worries. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about was if you could just tell us what's having you come to the event today. So, for example, if you're connected with a school, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a head teacher. If you're connected with a school, can you just tell us in the chat what your role is or what your connection with the school is? If you're not part of a school, don't worry, I want to ask you separately about that in a second. Okay, and if you're not connected with the school, maybe you can just tell us maybe what industry you work in, so we've got an understanding of what your interest in circular economy, sharing economy is today. I'll leave people to paste that in as we go. First of all, let's carry on and meet our panel first of all. So we've got three fantastic speakers. So I just want to thank you all for joining us. I'd like to invite you each to introduce yourselves. Maybe you can just tell us about yourselves, the organisations you represent, and what your role and kind of responsibility is for your businesses. So maybe Isabel, could you start?
Yep, sure. So I'm Isabel Mack. I am the founder of the Party Kit Network. We're a non-profit organisation who help connect people planning parties with people who have party kits of reusable tableware and decorations. So the idea is that by having local kits of reusable tableware for, say, a class of 30, if you can remember parties, you can borrow that from someone local rather than buying disposable plates, etc. We've got almost 500 kits, majority of which are in the UK, and probably about 10% of those are run by school PTAs, which is one of the reasons that I'm here today.
Great. Emma?
Hi everyone, I'm Emma Shaw, one of the co-founders of Library of Things, and we are a social enterprise with a mission to make borrowing better than buying, which we do by making it really easy and affordable for you to rent a whole range of quality products, from drills to sewing machines to sound systems, all from your local high street. So we have developed a type of kiosk and a software platform that means that you can reserve items and then visit your local library or a shop and collect that from a set of lockers, take it home and use it, and pay a fraction of the cost than you would to buy it. And alongside that, we run skills programs so that you can get skilled up in things like DIY and mending, and join repair parties locally to just tap into a wider movement around reuse and repair.
Very fantastic. And last but not least, Claire.
Thanks, Alex. Slightly different for myself. I work for an environmental consultancy around circular economy, which includes sharing economy. So yeah, I've been looking at the kind of policy and strategy around this area for about the last 10 years. And I did work for London as their first circular economy manager a couple of years ago as well. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, let's just start. And I just want to assume, I don't want to assume any kind of level of understanding, because people maybe have just joined the event today not knowing anything about circular economy. So can I just invite Claire to just explain to us maybe the difference between circular economy versus sharing economy, and just define those terms for us, just so we can use that as the kind of grounding for the event.
Sure. Well, I'm sure everybody will have their own way of describing it, but I will go for it in my own way, Alex, if that's okay. So if we start with, I guess circular economy is probably, the overarching idea. And the circular economy is trying to move away from what we feel we have generally at the moment, which is we might call a linear economy, where we take stuff, make stuff out of it, make products, make stuff we use every day. Your TVs, your radios, your sewing machines, your toothbrushes. We take stuff out the ground, make stuff with it, we use it, and then we dispose of it. And we might dispose of it responsibly by recycling it, or doing the right thing with it, or we might not. So this is kind of what we've been doing for the last, I guess, number of decades, but we can't continue in this way. It's environmentally very destructive, and actually it's very it's not a good business proposition. It's not a good business proposition. So actually what we do is we take the two ends of that line and we join them up into a circle, so that the products and materials we use every day, the stuff that we use every day, that businesses and people we use every day, is cycled round as much as possible. So we reuse a lot more, we remanufacture, we use products as services instead of actually buying them. So we get access to stuff. I mean, we've got two fantastic examples here this afternoon with Library Things and Party Kit Network, which just really exemplify a circular economy in itself. Now, circular economy can come in lots of different shapes and forms, and I'd say sharing economy is one of those forms. So sharing economy, certainly to me, is when somebody has an item, but they're not utilising it to its full advantage. So you might have a car that you use for 5 hours a week, and the rest of the time it is sat on your outside your house, empty, not being used. You might have a drill in your cupboard that you use twice a year to put up some shelves and swear a little bit when you're using it, and then put it back for it to gather dust for the next nearly 12 months before you want to have another swear at putting a shelf up. So there's all these products around the world just sitting there doing nothing, where they could be being shared. And of course, the opportunity that the internet has given us is to be able to communicate much more clearly what those products are, where they are, and to organise their use, as Emma pointed out. So, yeah, I think that's quite enough from me. But just to say that, you know, kind of from a strategic point of view, a lot of businesses and a lot of bigger businesses, small businesses, entrepreneurs, cities, countries, they're all interested in circular economy and sharing economy, and understanding how they can support their communities to do more.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, Claire. Thank you. That's very comprehensive and very easy to understand as well. So thank you. Well, the first question I'd like to jump into with the panel is about mindset, because I think we're going to have to change our mindset and change our thinking in order to adopt to this transition from an ownership-based economy to one of a sharing and use economy. And I've got a sense this is going to underpin everything we're going to discuss today. So the challenge I've kind of started to grasp is that there's a social status and self-worth is tied to the kind of number of things we own. And we need to change that. And so I'm interested to know and curious to know how we need to change our thinking, and also perhaps the language we need to use to achieve this. So I'd like to start with Emma. Given what you do at Library of Things and maybe the kind of users you encounter there, how do you encourage, or what kind of mindset do you encourage your users to adopt? And also, what kind of mindset have you had to adopt as you sort of developed your work?
Yeah, it's a juicy question. I think personally, I think that there's a kind of a human nature involved in status from what you have, and I suppose where we're coming from is creating the most desirable experience you can have that's maybe even better than buying, and the focus is on quality products. So whilst we started in our early days as when we were very small and a group of friends running this informally, we collected donated items from the public. We quickly realized that the number one thing that's going to stop people from going on Amazon and ordering something to their door in an hour or two, or, you know, overnight, is that quality really matters. And so you can buy cheap and use it once or twice, or you can access maybe better quality things than you'd otherwise pay to buy. So for example, we partner with product manufacturers directly. So all of our DIY tools, rather than being kind of old stuff that's from the back of somebody's shed, it's the top of the range professional grade drill produced by what we consider to be one of the best quality manufacturers, and we make that available at low cost. And so I think it's about creating ideally a superior experience in terms of the quality of the products you can access, but making it easy and convenient and affordable to actually then get hold of that. And for us, locality is really important. So you do need to collect. We have trialed a home delivery service, but actually we're quite purposeful about bringing people into their local high street and local spaces and connecting them to their local area, because, you know, you visit your local library or a cafe and you stop and chat or borrow a book or whatever else you might be doing. So you do have to make that journey, but we know that 80% of our borrowers live within 1 mile of their local kiosk. So it's hyper local, and I think there's an attractiveness to that is appealing to more and more people, you know, not just having experiences online, but actually feeling something and building a connection to where you live, and also to the satisfaction you get from doing things on your own.
Yeah, that's very good. So what I hear you say is it's about quality, and it's also about trying to almost make it into an experience as well. And kind of, whereas that experience maybe has been lost in the way we just buy things so quickly now.
Yeah, just to sum it up, we talk about it not just being a transaction, but being some kind of transformation in your mindset or in how you feel about something. That's not a kind of, I don't know, a cheap thrill of getting hold of something, but actually it's something a bit more meaningful like learning a new skill or meeting somebody you haven't met before, or going to a local space you've not visited before.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And Isabel, same kind of question to you, but I'm interested in the quality kind of aspect that Emma mentioned, because with your party kits, is that kind of the perspective you take, or is it slightly different?
Yeah.
And again, Yeah, tell us
That's
about.
definitely one of the advantages, and I don't think anyone could argue that a reusable plate isn't better than a soggy paper plate. I think there is, as you say, it does require a mindset shift. I think there's already quite a high expectation around rental within, say, the wedding industry, but not yet for parties. And predominantly our kits are aimed at kids' parties. And it's become so easy to just pop to the shops and buy all your themed paper plates and cups and balloons and all this kind of stuff that people don't think about it. But the advantages that Party Kits has is, one is the quality, like Emma was saying, in the product. The price as well. Most of the time it is cheaper to hire a party kit than buy the equivalent disposables, which is a really strong, powerful message. So you don't even have to be interested in the environment to benefit from it. And the convenience, everything you need is in the box. You won't get to the party and find your forgotten cups because it's going to be there. Some kits even take that a step further and have emergency boxes that have things like birthday cake candles in and all that kind of stuff. So it is really designed to be a party in a box, that everything you need is ready to go. I'd say, so all the party kits are run independently. It's a mixture from people from home who are passionate about helping their community reduce waste, but it's also school PTAs and zero waste shops. So they're kind of providing that service as part of their bigger mission. And I think that that's also helps in the kind of mindset space, in that, particularly with the PTA, it's about fundraising for your school. So it's not just that you're helping the environment or that you'll benefit from the convenience or even the good value, you're also helping your school. So there's lots of facets to it, I think.
No, it's great. Yeah, I can hear that. And it's an interesting one. Like the thing you mentioned about how well, it's going back to the quality, isn't it? But I'm maybe going to you, Claire, because talking to companies and businesses and maybe the strategy, and when you're trying to start to talk to them about circular economy, what's the kind of mindset challenges you might have encountered in those kind of situations?
Yeah, well, companies are interested in making money. Even not-for-profit organisations need to remain in business. And charities and social enterprises, you know, aim to continue to be able to pursue their mission. So fundraising of all types is critical to organisations. So and in changing times, you know, no business, no organisation stays still. Organisations that stay still tend to die. Actually looking at the future and future-proofing your organisation, I think is critical. So organisations are looking to the future, looking what their customers expect, and certainly, certainly not universally, but there's a proportion of global customers that are increasingly interested in the environmental impact of what they're buying and accessing. So and then a lot of businesses are starting to look at the impact that climate change is going to have on their business, and start to think about how they can future-proof their business against that, how they invest their money. So, you know, it is starting to happen. Of course, the challenges are around overcoming skepticism to new business models, and actually introducing a new business model into a big business is a hugely risky thing to do, especially if you've been doing what you've been doing for many decades. But you know, there are ways through that. It's a process of change management, like anything else, and you know, through a process of piloting, testing, getting feedback from customers, it's all possible.
No, that's great. And I guess what you're saying as well, like, you've got to look at the different motivations of different people. Some people will be focused on money, some will be focused on they're environmentally conscious, and others might have other reasons. So yeah, that's really, I guess you've got to find ways of appealing to these different priorities. And let me come back to you as well, because I wanted to ask you about what organizations that are trying to adopt use models, sharing models, how they can kind of support their users. Or, you know, Claire kind of alluded to there, it's a new business model, so it can be risky and it's going to be new to people. But what can organisations, let's take a school as an example, but if they want to try and start adopting circular sharing models, what can they do to support the users, the people who are going to be actually, you know, actually involved in the new model?
Was that to me? Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, it was, sorry, yeah.
So, it's predominantly through education. And I think actually where we have seen schools set up party kits, often it's been motivated by the children. So they understand that we have a problem, particularly with waste. And they are often the people that persuade their parents to make changes. So I think in a school setting, it is about education. It's about explaining where we are, what we need to do in order to reach a state where we do have true circular economies and we can share resources.
That makes sense. And have you had the same experience, Emma, in working with Library of Things as well? And I also was interested in what you mentioned about the quality, because now people seem to be going quickly to reuse. They want to use secondhand, they want it pre-loved, and that seems to be the best option. But you're actually saying, well, no, let's not just try and use something old again and again. Let's get something quality and then take care of it. So yeah, so how are you supporting your kind of users?
Yeah, so how are we supporting users, or what's the role of schools? Sorry, just to clarify.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think both. So how are you supporting your users? But I guess use that as an example of what schools can do and what schools who want to bring in circular economy models can do.
Yeah, I mean, pre-loved and secondhand and reused is 100% part of this mix. I think where Library of Things has specialized is really in is really quite expensive and high quality and typically electrical products. So carpet cleaners, pressure washers, steam cleaners, drills, you know, a whole range of power tools, sound systems. So we don't do everything and we don't try to do everything, but really what we're doing is focusing on a core set of products that, having tested 400, we've kind of narrowed down to about 35 that actually are very frequently borrowed, very useful, but the individual person only needs to use it once or twice a year, unless you're really into cleaning your carpets. You know, welcome to borrow more than that as well. But I think it's about partly creating a culture of sharing and finding an easy place to start. So we've started with the tools that kind of solve an immediate need in your home, but that can open up much more, I think, once you get in the habit. But it's difficult to start new habits, and this is new, and I think it takes a lot of energy to encourage people first to try it and then to keep them coming back. So I mean, I suppose in terms of how that applies with schools, there's two things in particular for us, and one is that locality point, being really nearby. And I think a school is basically a very hyper-local community of people, and so, you know, an obvious thing for Library of Things is a venue for a kiosk alongside space to host these kind of repair evenings or mending meetups or skills classes. And I think schools would be a dream location for that, albeit I don't know how much spare space there is, but a kiosk takes up about 5 to 10 square meters depending on the size, and could be used by that immediate community of people visiting schools, children and parents, actually ideally parents, for the types of things that we're currently lending out. And I think it's related to the second point, which is really about marketing. And I think experimental business models like ours and the Party Network and others, it's because you've got to put a lot of energy into getting people to try something for the first time, takes that kind of marketing energy. And we found that local community sort of influencers and people with a lot of good connections and word of mouth is our best form of marketing. So I think there's a nice overlap there with a kind of schools network and that community and that word of mouth, which can really get something to take off quite quickly.
Yeah, no, I can totally get that. I get just, so the more you kind of talk about schools, they're at the heart of a community often, aren't they? And like they've got so many avenues which are kind of very in sync with what you were talking about. That's interesting. Claire, did you want to add something? I saw you put your hand up.
Yeah, I just thought I'd mention when I was I haven't had an experience of them directly, but I think there's a number of examples on the internet of schools that are running uniform swap shops, whether that be informal, just very informally, or actually kind of more like a second-hand store. So actually there's a financial transaction or not. It's different models, and I just thought that might be a nice example to raise, because that, you know, that is right on the spot. That is sharing economy happening directly in schools and related to schools. And actually kids stuff is ripe for circular economy, because they have that habit of growing ever so a lot in a short period of time. So kind of in the business market, things like bicycles and toys and clothes and stuff are very, you know, that clearly a clear circular economy link there. But schools have already identified that opportunity, whether that be from the environmental or a social point of view. School uniforms are very expensive, especially the branded stuff. And actually, if you've got 2, 3, 4 kids going to school all in uniform, that's a lot of cash to shell out at the start of each school year, and that could be, you know, good quality pre-used uniform that can reduce that kind of financial outlay.
Oh, definitely. There was a lady who I was speaking to recently. She's the founder of a children's clothing rental business, and she was saying exactly that. It really suits, you know, schools given the turnover of uniforms. But one thing I want to bring up, she mentioned, which I thought was interesting, and it kind of ties to, I think, something you mentioned, Emma. But she talked about how the retention rate, once she has got clients signed up to the scheme, is so high, like in the high 80s, sometimes 90s. But she did have a challenge getting new signups, because I guess it's a new business model and it's something new. And she also mentioned the financial side of things. She mentioned how when you've got eBay and you're buying an item, if she has her service positioned again alongside some, you know, basically an ownership opportunity, people struggle to kind of be able to do the maths and do the calculation of what's good value should I be doing. So I'm just interested to know, yeah, if you've had this challenge, and what is the way to come around it? How do we need to be presenting the service options alongside, or maybe not alongside, the ownership options? Maybe I'll come to you, Emma, first, if you've got anything to yes.
Yeah. So the way we currently do it is we have a sort of a formula. So the basic premise is it's more affordable for you to borrow rather than buy if you're going to use something a few times a year. So we calculate 5% of the cost of buying the item. So say a drill is 160 quid, it costs you £8 a day to borrow it. And that means that unless you're going to use it 20 times or more in a year, you're better off borrowing it, renting it for those times. We don't communicate that formula, but we basically say everything is a fraction of the cost of buying it, and it's around 5%. And I think I don't know whether this is universal for sharing economy and circular businesses, but I think it's a very nascent market. It's quite young, especially I think it's tried and tested with the Airbnb platforms and Uber and driving and accommodation, but for this kind of, I suppose, domestic consumer products, it's not. It's very early, and I think it needs a level of public sector subsidization in order for the end user to be paying an affordable price. And given the cost of running these businesses can be incredibly high because they tend to be facilitated somehow by technology or by a team behind the scenes, and that costs money. It means that it's hard, if you were going to run it as a traditional business and pass on your costs plus a margin to the end user, it wouldn't be attractive, it wouldn't be affordable. And so I think it means that it's about finding alternative revenue streams that aren't the end customer to help fund the kind of core business, and that is not tried and tested. And so for us, it's really targeting organizations that want to achieve the outcomes we can deliver, like shifting behaviors towards low waste. So that applies to, say, local authorities who have to pick up the waste bill, or it could be retailers who want to transform their own business into being more circular and sharing, and charging them to provide this as a service. And I think that's probably going to be almost more important than what the end user pays in terms of the viability of these businesses.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, because there's so many background costs to, like you say, there's hardly any of it's online apart from the tools, I guess. So yeah, it's interesting. Have you had the same challenges about it with your business as well, or at least the partners you're working with, they had that challenge?
Yeah, I think we're in a slightly different position because hiring, on the most part, hiring a kit is cheaper than buying disposables. From a cost perspective, it's quite easy message to persuade potential hirers. And actually the cost of setting up a kit isn't particularly prohibitive, and we do offer grants and things where possible. I think I mean, ultimately most people do this because they're passionate about reducing waste. That's why they run a party kit. Some people run it as part of a wider business, whether it's a zero waste store or existing party rental service, and so for them, they are approaching it from a different perspective to people like me who just run it from home. From a network perspective, yes, we have a funding challenge, and it is still very much a passion project. Yes.
Fair enough. You can't say further than that. And I'm interested, Claire, from your perspective in terms of talking about to organisations who again are trying to go circular and go into a sharing economy model. How do you achieve buy-in? Because like you mentioned earlier, it is new, it's going to be maybe untested sometimes. So it is a risk. But how do they achieve buy-in, and who is it? Maybe we can take schools as an example potentially, but who do they need to get buy-in from to move forward with these things generally, have you found?
Yeah, I guess you need buy-in at a number of levels. Of course, you need buy-in from the senior decision maker. But you also need buy-in from the people that are going to have to deliver it, and how it's going to impact on their operations. And just from a business point of view, that would mean a senior director, the logistics person, the operations person, the finance person, and if you miss somebody out, it's you need to be really thorough in making sure you've engaged all the right stakeholders even within the business. But I guess in a school, the challenge would be, who's actually going to run it. I hear teachers are fairly busy people. And are you looking to the PTA or, an organisation like that who might be able to resource this with some people? But yeah, I think it is really important to get buy-in and have somebody, as well as a lot of these projects, and again, 2 examples here today are fantastic examples of when people want to make stuff happen. And I guess behind each of those school swap shops, uniform swap shops, there's somebody that really wants to make it, a small group of people who want to make it happen, and have a passion for it, for whatever, whether it's environmental or more a social push on that one. So I think, yeah, it's really important to identify who those people are, and if there isn't, and then for that organisation to support them as much as possible.
I guess you probably need to see if there's buy-in from the actual user base, whether there's going to be appetite for it as well.
I think, I know from a business perspective, actually, talking to your customer about what it is that they actually want, and they might not ask for they won't ask for a circular business model, but if they want convenience, right, they want something quirky or interesting, they want something like an experience, as Emma was talking about, then actually this could deliver for them. They might, the environmental drive might be there for some of them, but I think it'd be better to look at wider drivers as well.
Yeah. I think it's a new kind of reality. I mean, we've just been doing the same thing for so long. We don't know anything different. So sometimes you just need to offer something to people and just see how it goes. And I guess it's more finding people who are open to trying something new at some stage, which that's hard to find sometimes in certain situations. So yeah, that's really good. I'm interested to know, again, we're talking almost about creating a new industry here. We're talking about a sharing economy industry. And so obviously all of the businesses, yours, Emma, yours, Isabel's, the companies you work with, Claire, they need to be working together. So I'm interested to understand what you each can see we need to do as a kind of industry to support. What can sharing economy businesses do to support each other? So maybe we can start with you, Isabel. Have you seen like any needs that your industry or your business needs, and how it could be supported by other people in the sharing economy industry?
Yeah, I think there have been some things that have caused quite a lot of headaches. Things, for example, like, should we get public liability insurance? How does that work? Will anyone give us public liability insurance? And that's just, for me personally, that's something totally out of like my previous experience. And so, yeah, there is definitely a need that there's more guides and policies that are related to sharing and lending than the traditional kind of make, buy, sell model. And I mean, what's lovely about kind of the businesses that have started, so like you mentioned, the clothing rental, like there is a real sense of community, and like we've done some guest blog posts and all that kind of reciprocal stuff, and so people are talking about each other, but we still have a massive way to go to convince more people that borrowing is should be the first thing you think of, rather than automatically going online and buying something. And I often have this conversation with people who run party kits, are sometimes frustrated that aside from having a pandemic, but they're not seeing the traction that they expected. And that's partly because they're already miles ahead of most of the people around them. They already borrow things and already making decisions based on trying to live more sustainably, and not everyone else is there yet. So it is really a journey, and understanding that not everyone's quite at that point yet. And like Claire's point with the kind of what's happening in schools, so my son starts school in September, so we've had like all the gump through with all the instructions, and I was really surprised that there was nothing about like uniform swaps or pre-loved uniform. But that's because that's where I am personally. That's not necessarily where 90% of the rest of the parents are. So it's kind of like we are on a journey, and it's, as you say, how do we shift more people to think in this way?
Yeah, so it's a good point. Have you found that, Emma, as well? Do you have an experience you're kind of ahead of the curve with what you're doing, and it's kind of hard for people to grapple with because they're still a bit far back, or is your experience different?
I don't know. I don't think it's just an early adopter audience that we see. I think we have a really great mix of people, and I think the only thing that unifies them is that if you drew a circle with a 1 mile radius around any spot in London, you get quite an amazing mix of people. And I think we appeal to lots of different people for different reasons. And I think the primary thing is I need a thing, and that's quite a universal problem you're trying to solve. And then I need it to be nearby, and I need it to be affordable. And then we know that the kind of reinforcing motivation that we're seeing is that environmental motivation. But I think that crosses all sorts of demographics and motivations, and so I think it's quite unifying. I think it's just that, how do you hear about something and how do you try something new? That's probably it's a behavioral hurdle. But yeah, I think that answers.
No, that's good. That's good. And so I got a follow-up question, because I started to ask a question, what does the industry need to do? So I'm interested to know, as you set up Library of Things in different locations, have you found that kind of other sharing economy model and businesses have set up around you? Have you been a kind of catalyst for things like that, or anything like that for yourself?
Yeah, I think so. Our vision is very much that Library of Things is part of circular and zero waste reuse hubs in neighborhoods. So we're not the whole solution. And the types of appetite we have from partners is people running shared spaces, so event spaces, or council libraries lending out books. You might imagine kind of co-working spaces and creches, so childcare spaces. And there's a whole movement of models like that, which Library of Things sits alongside. And in some ways, where we're looking at new locations, that's very much driven by demand. So it's driven by interest from partners who are already doing amazing things. So it might be a reuse shop, for example, in Finsbury Park on the high street. So we plug into that really neatly. So for us, it's actually, we look for we call them indicator species. So where are the repair parties going on? Where are there local environmental movements with energy? because they're an easier place to start than somewhere with no local appetite. And so the way we work is really demand led. And I think in terms of the industry more broadly, I think what's different to the traditional linear economy is that it's very much powered by partnership. And for us, we have a whole quite unlikely allies, so that you might have Bosch making drills on one side, and then grassroots community networks over here, and then public sector and local authorities and local landlords, retailers and housing developers. So it's a really weird mix of partners, and I think that's what makes it very powerful, but it's different to the traditional retail sector as it is at the moment.
Yeah, I love the word species you use now. It reminds me of kind of keystone species, when you've got to identify the sort of species. But
totally. And I think it's healthy to think of this as an ecosystem, because I think it's got a whole mix of different partners.
No, I love that. That's really great. And I guess it reminds me as well, schools, in some ways, they often will have community groups using their halls and things, which might be running repair cafes and things like that. So in some ways they are perfect. And also, you mentioned marketing earlier. They're already connected with their community. They've got, in touch with all the parents. So it's easy to kind of spread the message through that network often as well, isn't it? So yeah, it's really good. Claire, I want to ask you kind of similar kind of question, but let's talk about circular economy a little bit, kind of more broadly. But how have you seen the evolution of the circular economy kind of grow? And again, what's the interconnectivity you might have observed between businesses? Is it similar to the kind of examples the other days you're mentioning?
Yeah, well, I guess the principles behind circular economy, they're not new, and I guess, if we go back to my parents' generation, where reuse and buying things that were built to last. My dad managed to fix my mum's twin tub washing machine until it was nearly as old as their marriage was, until she absolutely put her foot down and said she was having an automatic one. So yeah, I guess we're not returning. The whole thing is now, with the application of the internet, a lot easier. But the kind of principles behind it are not new, but it's something that we need to work to achieve. Certainly communicating about circular economy to businesses, to people, using the right language, I think is something that we've learned quite a lot, that we perhaps don't even mention the word circular economy, because it can mean so many different things to so many different people. But we talk about business opportunities and making things future fit, and thinking about the future, thinking about the social opportunities, the jobs, the volunteering opportunities, the skills that people can develop through more circular jobs. So I think the way we communicate, we've learned quite a lot about that in the last few years. I think, increasingly businesses are getting engaged, and there are a lot of kind of presenting the opposite picture to the other guests this afternoon. The big businesses come together certainly under the umbrella of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and their CE 100, which is kind of the leading think tank in this area. But we need to see, there's quite a lot, I'll be honest, there's a lot of talk, and we'd like to see more action. But organizations like Adidas have piloted incentivized return schemes. A lot of outdoor equipment companies who their basis, their customers are people who go out and enjoy time in the countryside at the weekend. They're likely to be environmentally motivated. People like North Face, often Patagonia, are offering repair offerings to customers. IKEA are trialing in stores, incentivized return of product. So it's starting to show in the big businesses, but we'd like to see a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, it's good to see big companies doing that, because they get attention, I guess, don't they? And so they inspire other businesses to do the same. I'm just going to stop there for a second. If anybody in the audience has got any questions, please do feel free to post in the chat. We'll love to come to those in a second. I've got one or two more, and then we can open it up. It's sort of related to what has been mentioned so far. This kind of follows on, but what are the kind of opportunities that each of you see for the sharing economy now? Maybe gaps you currently see that could represent opportunities. Could I come to you, Emma, first? Anything you've noticed?
I was just thinking about that. I think it's maybe, so I think partnership is one thing. I think just being able to join forces with and find and have capacity to work with others, because I imagine lots of these initiatives like ours that we've talked about are started as passion projects and may evolve to be something more than that. But I would say most share the challenge of lacking capacity. And I think to make meaningful partnerships, yeah, that's a need. And I think a challenge is that I often come back to just core funding. Who ultimately, what problem are we solving? And I think we're solving a problem that's currently picked up by the public sector. And I think what we stand for is ultimately, in terms of Library of Things, is making sure that things are designed to last and be more repairable. And that means influencing the design stage of products. Because at the moment, poor product design, the tab is picked up either by us as individuals of poor quality things or by the public sector when we throw it away. So I don't know, that for me, there's something about, for a healthy sharing economy kind of ecosystem with organizations like ours playing an active role, we need to be properly funded and not just kind of working in the margins of our own time, say. And that's been a challenge for Library of Things, is finding the right type of funding and the governance that sits around it, that means that we stand for this mission and we don't sort of get co-opted into the consumerist machine, because that's the way the world wants us to be. Everything from getting your insurance to a bank account to funders, everything is geared towards this linear world. And I think that ultimately takes either kind of lobbying, policy changes, but also creation of appropriate funds that can fund our core. Because yeah, we've got enough customers and enough demand to kind of do the rest.
Yeah, it's interesting, because it reminds what you said earlier about, it's almost like you try to be financially smart. Everyone talks about having a passive income, but you were describing how you've had to find passive income streams for your business to support what you're doing, which is interesting that you've had to do that. What about you, Isabel? What's your experience, and what have you seen in your kind of, talking to your partners? What are the opportunities you see maybe coming up?
I was just going to go back to Emma's point about
please.
the product design phase, just because I think like we will still need people to make stuff, but it's so important that it's considered like how long it's going to last, and once it is used, what do you do with it? And I think, having spent quite a lot of time looking at different tableware, which has become quite an expert subject of mine, there's loads of different options, and they, to a very degree, meet a requirement, but actually finding out about what do you do with it at end of life is really difficult. And I think that if you want to support a sharing economy, you do need better quality, but that goes totally against our consumerist society. They want us to buy lots of things, and that's a whole economic shift. So that is a massive challenge.
No, I totally agree, and I'm interested as well, Claire, in, Emma mentioned earlier about they've got a close relationship with Bosch, so the items, and that seems like an important kind of facet of this. We need to have less kind of space between the end user and the manufacturers, because if the manufacturers know they're going to have the items come back to them, they are going to improve the design, and they're going to make it easier for themselves to be able to refurbish, recycle the products. If they know it's just going to be taken off their hands and they have to worry about it, then they're going to do it very differently. So what are the opportunities again for kind of circular economy, sharing economy businesses, or people who want to bring models like that into their businesses, you think, in the future?
I think the opportunity is, and you kind of almost said it there, Alex, is that you have a different relationship with the customer in a circular economy business model, whether that's hire and lease or product as a service or reuse and remanufacture. You have in all those, you have an ongoing relationship with the customer. Whereas when you make a sale, you have a touch point with them and then they're gone. And you, if they really like your product, some people are very brand loyal. Others might, just look for the best value when they need to replace that product. But with a circular economy model, you have opportunities to talk to that customer and go back to them on a regular basis to renew your relationship with them and change it, adapt it to their needs. So, and I think that's very attractive to businesses. And in the world where resources are getting more and more expensive, the idea of being able to get access back to your product, to get that drill back at the end of its life, it is again very attractive. My favorite statistic has been for quite a long time, I really must get a new one, is there's more gold in a ton of old mobile phones than there is in a ton of gold ore.
Wow.
So in fact, there's 300, I read the other day, is 300 times more gold in a ton of old mobile phones than there is in a ton of gold ore. So that is why they want your mobile, and that's just one of the critical raw materials in a mobile phone. There's all sorts of other exciting, expensive things in there that come from very challenging parts of the world to access those materials. So there's that's a big driver, increasingly a driver for businesses as well.
Well, it's funny you mentioned gold. I'm just reading the question. I apologise if I'm mispronouncing your name, but someone called Hin Lin, that she's asked Emma, she said she agrees with your shift about, and she's talked about old is gold. But have you got any other examples specific to kind of school and students where we're changing this mindset away from old is gold?
Or towards kind of reuse?
Yeah.
I mean, I think schools through to universities are essentially campuses of lots of people with lots of creative ideas, and we've had interest in the past from students for bringing library of things into universities, say, for sharing of things they know they don't need to buy and they're only going to use for a short period of time. And a kind of cute example from our local school in one of our sites in Crystal Palace, the kids named all of our things. So I think, creating a connection between us and the products we use by naming them is quite a fun way of reminding ourselves that these aren't disposable and they have a personality and they're shared between people. That's a library of things example. I mean, I'm just trying to jog my brain. I'm sure there's a whole load of cool initiatives in terms of sharing initiatives that just happen organically in settings like education, because it's such a kind of, I don't know, a hot space for sharing ideas and sharing things.
No, it's great. I'm sure there are. The only thing I can think of off the top of my head, there was a school in I forget where's now, but they've got a cycling library, so you can actually borrow a cargo bike, which has been adapted to be able to carry children, so that you can borrow this bike for, I think it's actually free at the moment. They're going to start charging, but essentially rent a cargo bike to take your kids around the local parks. And it's also part of the Clean Air Initiative as well, because they breathe in lots of lovely clean air during the ride. But that's something that's come from a school, and it's now focused on parents and teachers and anyone else connected to the school. So that's another kind of education specific example. Claire, we had a question, Isabel, about what you mentioned about public liability insurance. So
yeah,
she's saying she's experienced the same thing, but can you just share more about your experience about that and how you're doing it?
So currently, not all kits legally require public liability insurance. It's really kit owner choice. Some already have it as part of a wider business. At the moment, people will individually go to brokers and get policies, but they're quite prohibitive on cost. Right. So my aim was to create a scheme for the network that their members could opt into. which we'd sort of just started, and then we had a pandemic, at which point it became impossible in the UK. It's just not something that underwriters are willing to get on board with at the moment. But it is a model that exists already. So Toy Libraries Australia already have a similar scheme set up where their libraries can opt in to get cover like public liability insurance. And it's a way of, one, not having to explain every time what it is we're trying to do and who we lend to and what we have as an individual, but also to hopefully reduce the cost as well, so it's less prohibitive.
Yeah.
But yes, it's complicated and it's not an area I know much about. It's just been a real challenge. Yeah, in fact, we are progressing with Australia slightly quicker than we are with the UK at the moment.
Interesting. I just wonder if you've had any experience around public liability insurance that would be interesting to share. Have you had any challenges around that?
Tons, yeah. We started by mashing together 3 different insurance policies with a broker that we found, and then because it's complex, because we won't go into detail, but it's a thing you need to trade, and you can't get an off-the-shelf version. Once we created our own, we then shopped around the kind of major insurance providers and found a high street lender who was like, actually, we could do that. Worked with a senior broker there to design a new type of package. And our goal would be to make that kind of easily, currently we hold as a platform all of that insurance sort of burden for our sites that we run. But in time would be cool to make that available as a kind of, ready-made off the shelf, start a lending library, use one we've made earlier, because there's so much technicality in it. And there's perceived risk that isn't real, but just from a lack of evidence. So it's easy for lenders just to say, sounds a bit unusual, I'm just going to go away from that. But no, we have had success with it after lots of work. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Sounds it is possible. Just got to work on it, I guess. Okay. And Claire, the question we had for you was about looking at focusing in on awareness building education, and what aspects to focus on in that education and awareness building piece.
Yeah, I think for me, and this is absolutely not rocket science, but as circular economy can mean so many things to lots of different people, actually just learning by sharing examples. So, I mean, I think if anybody had not heard of sharing economy before they came today and had listened to Isabel and Emma talk, I think they'd know what it was by when they left. And actually, if you can collate examples of the different types of circular economy business models and share those with people, and have a range from startups to big businesses that can illustrate that, I think it really brings it to life for people.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Sorry. No, that's great. That's great, Claire. No, I totally agree. That's excellent. Okay, I think we'll wrap up there. But thank you very much for joining us today. Before we go, I just want to invite the speakers to post in the chat about how that people can find out more about you. So maybe everyone could just post your social media handles, any kind of information we've got. So if anyone would like to reach out, please feel free to use that information there. I'll just copy this whole chat into a Word file myself. So I can then send it to everybody who signed up for the event today. But lastly, I just want to say thank you so much to Emma, Isabel and Claire for joining us today. It's so fantastic to hear what you're working on. You're doing amazing things, kind of really groundbreaking stuff. So thank you for your contribution you're making. And thank you to everyone who joined as well. And I hope that was a really interesting, useful conversation. Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks, Alex. Nice to meet you, Emma and Isabel.
All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye all.